Hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome to episode 14. 14, can you believe we're here already? Of Sipping Tea with Stacey T. I am Stacey. Thank you for being here with me today, and today's episode I think is going to be very telling of a lot of us. I think it is something that many of us don't really take a second to realize how different we may be according to our brand, and then according to who we really are. Like, who at the fundamentals of who we truly are is Stacey, is who you are. So again, thank you for being here with me this afternoon. It is a dull, hey, how you doing, Kathy? It is a dull day out. It's supposed to storm, but hopefully you're going to find a little bit of positivity, a little bit of sunshine in today's episode. Before I get into it, as you know, it is Sipping Tea with Stacey T. So without the tea, what is that? So today's tea is Snapple Peach Tea. I already know what this tastes like. I actually love it. And it's a little humid, so I figured today would be our first iced tea day. This is actually a tea that we drink a lot in the household. I'm going to be having that in this lovely container that my sister purchased for me. So I'll start pouring that. Again, it is peach tea. I think I found out about this tea. Hey, Tiffany. I think I found out about this tea maybe a couple years ago. And since then, it's been one of my favorites. If you have not tried it, and if you like peach flavoring, I highly suggest that you take advantage of it. I'm pouring the whole thing in here because I know I'm going to drink the whole thing. So again, for those of you who just came in, this is the tea that I will be taking. Hey, Al. This is the tea that I will be drinking today. It will not be a hot tea because it is humid and I'm always hot. If you didn't know that about me, I literally stay hot. In the winter, I'm hot. And so as the temperatures start to climb this week, I was like, man, I can already feel it. So yeah, not a fan of the heat. But in any event, hey, Kim. Thank you all for being here today. Today's topic that I came up with, brand versus reality, who am I think is something that's really important for us to discuss, and I'm going to be, really clear about, where I feel like I fall in that. And so I'm going to start off, and for those of you who have not been here with me, I always start off with, Stacey, young Stacey, young, a little bit older, and then the age I am now. I'm not going to say old Stacey because I don't want to say I'm old. So that's the reason within itself. I'm going to take a sip of this because we're going to get into it. All right. So, that's so good. I think that it's really common for us as we grow up to kind of adopt a persona. I think we adopt a way that we feel like we're supposed to show up in the world, how we're supposed to present ourselves in the world, and then everything that we do kind of falls into that. Obviously, when we're young, we don't know that we're doing that necessarily. I feel like it's something that is shaped because of our environment. It's shaped by, how we're raised, our family dynamic. It's shaped by school. It's shaped by culture. So there's so many little pieces that go into, what our brand becomes. And the thing is, I want you to be really clear. Your brand is not necessarily something that is even yours. And I know that's going to sound really odd because people are like, oh, I'm branding myself and this is how I want people to see me. And that's fine, and I get that. But oftentimes the brand that becomes, who we present to the outside world is really something that is shaped by a lot of other people's opinions, a lot of other people's thoughts. And so I'm just thinking about, the young Stacey. So young Stacey, and I've mentioned this on multiple episodes before, but if you haven't caught up, go to YouTube. They are all located there. But the younger Stacey grew up in an environment that most people didn't look like her. And I think and I will say I grew up in a Caribbean household. So yes, I'm black, obviously, but there are different different ways based on, whether you're a Southern Black person, whether you're, from Africa directly, whether you're from Africa because of the slave trade, or what island you might have been dropped off on, or where you dropped off in mainland America. And I think that a lot of how we were raised as kids is based on that, right? So I was, I'm Bayesian, so the reality of it, and my father was born in Barbados. So I think that a lot of the shaping of how we were raised was based on, ancestry. What are the things that they did? And I know that, and I think a lot of people went through this, so I don't think this is a specific to being a Caribbean person. But I know, like, you do not go out of the house making me look crazy was a very, very big deal. And I've mentioned that on another one of the episodes. And so I, always was making sure that, I looked a specific way. And it was challenging because I was a tomboy as a kid. I didn't really care that much about what I looked like. If I went out in ripped pants or came home in ripped pants, it is what it is. Like, don't try to put me in a skirt to go to school. I'm not having that. Even though my mom, she tried. And sometimes I had to concede, she was dressing me. But the older that I got, I stopped, I stopped being so much of a tomboy. Even though I still was not really girly, my mom was good for saying, don't make her look crazy. Absolutely. I think a lot of parents did that. And I get it. I'm sure those of you who are parents don't want your kids to make them, you don't want your kids to go out and make you look crazy or make you look like a bad parent. I remember hearing stuff like that. People will think if you go out of the house and your hair's not done or you look like you're dingy, that I'm not taking care of you. And I get all that. I understand that. But I think what happens is, for some people, and I'm not saying for everybody, but for some people, it becomes almost an obsession about how you appear to other people, as opposed to making sure you look good for yourself. Like, I think it's people want to look good for themselves, right? People ask me about makeup all the time. I do makeup for me. I don't do it for anybody else. If people don't like it, then I get it, but I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. But I think that, as a young child, you're building that dynamic of, okay, this is what I look like. And that very early on is people influencing your brand, like who you're supposed to show up in the world as. And when you're a kid, you don't really have a lot of control over that. My mom said it, and now I do. Yeah, it's common. Nobody wants your kids to make them look bad. I mean, come on. So, as even I remember... one of the ways that showed up too is not just physical, but it was absolutely on paper. I was obsessed with grades. And I think it's good to have, motivation to be, intellectual, to get education, to be smart, whatever you want to call that, or whatever you quantify that to be. Book smart, because I can't say there are people that are smart that books is not their thing. But for me, I wanted to get an A. Like, it was like a driver for me. But as I looked at it now, having perspective, looking back on young Stacey, a lot of that was based on wanting approval, wanting to, for people to say you're enough, you are good. Because I see this, that means I can apply that you're good, you're smart, you're worthy, right? And so for me, it was literally like I would argue with teachers about my grade, like to try to get from, especially if there was any wiggle room, I was going to find that wiggle room and push my grade point average up a little bit. But from that perspective, I was already, for me, it was important for people to see me as smart, right? Because I already felt othered. I already felt like different than the other kids, and obviously looking around and seeing mostly white kids, I was different. I was othered already. And so for me, my brand was, okay, I'm the black girl in an all-white environment. I'm Caribbean in an environment that doesn't really have any of that at all. Like looking back, I don't remember any. Now I knew that there was a girl that was Puerto Rican, but I didn't even know she was Puerto Rican. I knew she looked different, but I didn't know she was Puerto Rican at the time. But I was being othered at that time in that way. And so for me, I really wanted to make sure that my grades were something, because there were smart kids, and I wanted to make sure that I was as smart, if not smarter than, and I wasn't smarter than some of them kids. Those kids, I'm like, how do you get over a 4.0 average? Like, how is that done? I'm not doing all that extra credit to do that. But there were kids that, surpassed me on that. But for me, on paper, that was part of my brand. Had to have that look, had to have that appearance, had to have, everybody look at me in a specific way. And so what I want you to think about, for those of you who are on, is I want you to put in the chat, what was it, if you look back on your younger self, what was it that you realized people wanted you to appear as? Did they want you to appear as a perfect little princess, potentially, or like a super girly girl, or, the person that was great at sports or whatever? What was it that you felt like people were saying, this is who you're going to be? And I think the one interesting thing is, I'm not a parent, but I know that I've heard a lot of parents say, or ask their kids really early on, what is it that you want to grow up to be, right? And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if that's just because you've heard every other parent say that. But what I've learned is that, kids automatically start to adapt or adopt themselves. They kind of shift themselves to now what they've said to you. So if, you said you were going to be a doctor to your parent one random time, or, your parents are like, you're going to be a doctor. You're smart, so you're going to be a doctor. So now that's your brand, right? Everything you do has to fit that brand. You have to work towards getting to being a doctor. So what happens when you don't? Right? What happens when maybe you get older and you're in middle school, and now you're middle school Stacey that hates math? And now, mind you, I never wanted to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. So be very clear, never wanted to be a doctor. Blood, cutting people is not my zhuzh. No, I don't like dealing with bodily fluids, and no, I'm good, right? So that was never a thing for me. But I remember early on saying I want to be a lawyer. But what if in middle school you take a class and you realize you hate it, right? You hate everything that's going to, like, maybe you don't like history. Now, I loved history. So again, that might have tracked to, okay, maybe she's going to stay along the lines. She loves to talk. She loves to, because we didn't have debate then, but she loves to write. I didn't like to read. So that might have been a problem early on. A hard worker. So you were told to be a hard worker. That's an interesting thing too, that whole dynamic of working hard. I think the reason why that's really interesting is because we as a people, as Black folks, had to work hard or else we would die, literally be killed, right? Specifically when you're thinking about slavery in this country, and slavery that also existed outside of this country. So for the Caribbean folks who always feel like, oh, people aren't talking about me, no. They stopped off on all the islands, and there were slaves on each and every one of them. So some spoke Spanish, some spoke English, but either way, that was the reality. And so what I will say is that mentality of hard work was life or death, literally. Unfortunately, what it became was the level, like, that became our normal, right? That's what you have to do. And I'm not saying you need to be lazy, but there's a difference between somebody who is lazy and someone who's a hard worker, right? People might have heard the term work smart, not hard. And I don't know what that means for everyone, but there's a back-breaking work that our people did, and then there's a back-breaking mentality that you can have, right? You can use your brain. And it's funny because I've known people that have gone from jobs that were more physical to jobs that were more, that you had to use more of your, like, ability to solve problems and whatnot, and, do a lot more paperwork and do a lot more of that. And it's both of it's challenging. Both of it is hard work. But what I will also challenge people to start thinking about is, why is it that people are trained to have to work hard? And are all people trained to have to work hard? Because I will dare to say that not everybody has been trained to work hard. So if that's your brand, what does that mean for you? And when you take a break, what does that mean for you? Does that mean that you're not a hard worker? Does that mean that you are lazy? Or does that mean that you are actually recognizing that you're not a pack animal and you need to take a break? Because even they need to take a break. That is one of the biggest issues that I've seen. And I actually had a huge issue and still sometimes feel guilt around self-care. like doing something for myself. Even it could be basic things, right? But taking the time to not be busy doing work and just taking time to care for myself, that's sometimes a very big challenge, because again, you've taught to be a hard worker. Work. But are you going to work until you're dead? Or is there going to be some measure somewhere in life where your brand says, okay, I can do this, but I can also do and be that. My mom told me something negative when I was younger. I'm slowly seeing my worth now. Yeah, I think that oftentimes people don't recognize that the influence, because brand is not necessarily bad or good. Okay, brand is literally just what people have. As I said, all those things, all those external factors kind of hit you with, and then you start to mold, and they start to mold, especially if they're your parents or your village, if you will. People start to mold and grind that into, oh, this person's great at XYZ, then that's what they're going to be, and we're going to make sure that they get there. And I'm not going to say that everybody's doing that and they have bad or ill intentions, but have they even consulted with you? Have they even talked to you about if that's something you want, or if it's something that you think would be beneficial to your future? Have they asked you what you want your future to look like? Or have they said, okay, my job is to mold you? And again, not a parent, so this is not a dig at parents, because I know that, people are told, you have to take what your kids are good at and mold it and nurture it and try to press and push into them so that they can become, right? So that they understand the value of, working and all those pieces. I was conditioned that I need to be in a suit going to work every day. So there was a period where I was known for the suits I wore. Yeah, man. That's actually a really good thing, and it's interesting because I have a hard time with that. I have a hard time, not with the suits so much, but with the lack of people dressing for, and that's again the brand that my head was taught. You have to dress to go to work. And I remember, I actually worked in a law firm as one of my first jobs, and so you did need to wear suits, and I had like a couple of suit jackets, and I kept mix matching them with the bottoms, whether they were skirts or pants or what have you. But then I started working at other places that were more, business casual or business. And so they were like, no, you don't need to wear, you can wear a sweater set, or you can wear just a shirt and a pair of slacks or whatever. And I was like, what is this? Nowadays, let me tell you, I think people have gone in the opposite direction. So I'm like, what in the world is this person wearing at work? Because there's, like, for me, no differentiation. But again, for me, brand was when you go to work, you wear XYZ, right? But again, I do get that if you were conditioned, and that's a great word for it. A lot of what we were raised on is conditioning. And there's a good portion of that. There's a good piece of that. It teaches you the value of work, a good work ethic, of teamwork, and all those things that can be really great and wonderful conditioning lessons. However, have you even taken a step back from all the things you were conditioned to learn and to be? And if you're honest, because I will say I am in that process. I've had some time off. As you guys know, I'm still looking for my next employment opportunity. But even in that time, I've had a lot of thinking time, a lot of introspective time to figure out, who am I? Am I just the brand? Am I only the things that people expect me to be? Am I just that? Or what is the reality for me? And I will say, in middle school, you're starting to try, as you go from elementary school to middle school, there's a big process where you're trying to discover a little bit more about yourself, and you're noticing that some of the friend groups might shift in that time frame. And oftentimes people, though you knew that person from when you were 5 years old, you better stay friends with that person. And I know why people have said that is because, you should value friendship, but not all friendships are meant for a lifetime. And that's something that you grow to understand as you get older, right? People say, some people are there for a season, some people are there for a lifetime, and they're not the same. And there's not a problem with that either. The brand is you're going to give up on people and you don't stay true to people. But the reality is people change and shift and grow and not always together. And that is okay. There's no need to like try to fit a square peg in a round hole. If it doesn't fit in that time in your life, then that's okay. You don't and it doesn't mean that you don't like the person. It doesn't mean you don't wish them well. It just means that things have shifted, and that is life, people. But again, we're conditioned to do things a very, very specific way. So as you go from the elementary school to that middle school, and you're trying to, figure out who it is that you are a little bit, and your relationships are shifting a little bit, and maybe now you're interested in boys or girls or what have you. And so you're trying to figure that out, which is even more confusing. Your hormones are going crazy. And then you're moving from that and you're learning a lot more, and how you learn is a lot different, because at that point in time, one thing that's really interesting for most schools, and it's not for every school, but for me anyways, from kindergarten to 5th grade, I had one teacher that taught all the subjects, right? I was introduced to all the subjects with this one person. So I only had to navigate that one person. Now, when you're in middle school, and for some of you junior high, now you're going to different classes, right? You have to learn people's teaching style. You have to learn how they give homework, how they test, what their personality is, maybe what their attitude may be like. So you're having to navigate not only learning, not only your hormones, not only, all these relationships that are changing and shifting. Now you're having to learn relationships with other people. So you're learning relationships with, people that are your age. You're navigating relationships with people that are in your home, in your community. You're navigating teacher relationships as well. So you have all these people that are basically putting their tentacles into creating who you are. Now, where are you in all that? Like, where are you in all that? How much of your brand was anything that had to do with anything that you liked? Right? And I think that one of the things that's interesting, even when you're going to, school, if you decide to go to college, or if you decide to go right to the workforce, or if you went to like something like a technical, if you were technically trained, people have a design on what it is you're going to do. So let's say you decided to, go into become a plumber. And, you went through and you became an apprentice, and you did that whole process. People want to tell you what type of company you need to work for. If you're going to open a business, you're not going to open it in this area, because everybody still has their tentacles. And it's not bad to get advice. So let me be entirely clear. It's fine. But at what point do you say, thank you, but I need to decide what I want my reality to be? Because up until that point, people are pouring in your brand. This is who you are. This is what you're going to do. This is the decision you're going to make. When do you say, what does Stacey actually want? And who do I want to be? Who is the person that I am? Oftentimes the other thing that I find that was really transformative, or really had an influence on the person that I am, was a lot of people saying no to me, or people saying, you can't do this, or telling me no, or you can't, or you shouldn't do this. And again, that's sometimes positive, sometimes it's not. But when you're a kid, you don't really have the ability to, push back against that. And if you do, y'all know what happened. If you were brave enough to get pushback, you know what happened. So there wasn't a lot of pushback. There was a lot of internal, just like putting all this stuff away, tucking all this information away. But the problem is we have so much information in our brains that we do not tap back into. It's just there randomly. Like if we were to play on a game show, we we would have like all this random trivial pursuit, trivial knowledge in our heads that we could pull out, but we don't really tap back into that. It's just like you just put it there, it's in your brain, and then it goes nowhere. You love to break barriers. That's something that you were taught, or that's what you want to be. Are you a barrier breaker? by nature, or is it something that you were taught to be? I think that the other, and I love that, by the way. I'm hoping that that's who you are. But what I will say is, I think that we need to be really clear about, you know, at this point of our lives, we have to start looking back into some of the things that we learned, some of the things that we were taught. Even in love, they weren't necessarily the best for who we want to be. Not for who we were then, because some of the things that we were taught then were survival things. Things that you needed to literally survive. Like, Stacey, look both ways before you cross the street, right? Good lesson. And is it still something that I use? Yes. I still need to look both ways because people are crazy, right? So you still need to look both ways before you cross the street. Great nugget. We'll never not need that nugget. But Stacey, oh, you talk a lot. You should be a lawyer. Now, could I be a lawyer? I think so. I think if I actually wanted to go to law school at this point and age and stage in my life, I think I could do that work. Do I want to? No, I do not. But the reality is, that's what people, because I said when I was a kid, after, you know, all this information and input, I want to be a lawyer, right? And I loved Perry Mason. That was one of my inspirations for why I wanted to be a lawyer. But you know, the funny thing that happened is, when I went to college, because now we're in college age, Stacey. When I went to college and I'm taking these classes, now mind you, even from a younger kid, I did not like reading. I just didn't enjoy it. I have no idea what possessed me to be a sociology major pre-law in college, because again, I did not like reading, right? And there was, I mean, when I say my books were always about this thick, I am not exaggerating. But I remember, you know, going to classes, and I started to take some pre-law things just to kind of get my feet wet, because you have to go to undergraduate school and then law school, obviously. And I was taking a class, and it was like a research class. And I remember, you know, one of the professors coming in and talking about, so there was a professor that did my class, but then they had another professor come in and talk about research and how much they loved it and how it was like one of the biggest parts of the job. And I remember sitting there and thinking, I do not want to do this. Like, if this is like a huge portion of this job, I am not interested. And then we had a debate class. So even then I was kind of like, I don't know if this is my thing. I don't know if this is what I want to do. But it had been so much of my brand. I had been talking about how I was going to be a lawyer because, you know, once you say things when you're a kid before you go to college, people expect that of you. And if you don't, when I tell you, they will make you feel like a failure. Even if you graduate and you get a degree, that's not on your brand. That's not what you said you were going to do. God forbid you change your mind or change direction. People cannot be, I'm going to tell you, people can be very unforgiving with you deciding that the brand that you had as a kid is no longer the brand that you are that's not my reality. My reality has shifted. My reality has changed. I have grown. I have seen the world. I have had loss. I have loved and lost. You know, all the things that influence now the decision that I'm going to make as a grown adult. But people people literally, when I say people want to keep you in a box, they want to keep you in a box and close the lid. And that's it. That's who your brand is. That's who you're supposed to be. And anything that shifts from that to show you the reality of the person that you are, people can be vicious. I mean, vicious. You had no choice to be a barrier breaker out of necessity, but that's who I am. Yeah, you know, necessity can also be one of the biggest reasons. What I will say is, for me, necessity has been one of the reasons that I have a firmer grasp on the reality of my life, as opposed to the I'm trying to think. I don't want to say like the dream of my life, because it makes it sound like I'm no longer a dreamer. But like what people had put me in a box to be has now been shifted because of necessity, because of what my reality truly is, and things that I have let go of, and things that I have, you know, decided that this is what I want for myself, and this is what it might look like for me. And not everybody's going to like it, and not everybody's going to agree, and I am okay with that. And I think because if you grew up, and I would love to see this, if you guys can put just like a heart or something in the chat. If you grew up to be a people pleaser, put a heart or say yes in the chat. Man, I'm telling you, if you have not had, for those of you who came in late, this is the tea that I'm drinking. Snapple, peach tea. It is the best ever. But if any of you grew up to be a people pleaser, please put that in the chat. And again, it can be a simple heart, smiley face, whatever it is that you want to denote to say that you were. Because I think that oftentimes, when you grew up to be a people pleaser, you have a very hard time letting go of the image other people form for you. You have it almost feels like mourning. You have to mourn like this idea, this brand that people said that you're going to be, the box that people put you in and labeled you with. It is so difficult to then say, I love you. I appreciate all the things you've done for me. I appreciate maybe sacrifices that you've even had to make for me. But that's not the Stacey that you're going to see at 48 years old. Like, that Stacey's different. That Stacey's definitely different than she was at 20. And I'm not just talking about my back pain and knee pain, which is very much like, hey girl, hey. So I'm not talking about that. But I'm different than mentally than I was at 20, 21. I'm definitely different than I was even at 30. And at 30, I really felt like this is when, for me, the shift in how I saw, how others saw me and how I wanted to see myself. I started to say, like, what is there for me? Because, and it wasn't, I think a lot of people, when they think about brand versus reality, think of like what success is. And that's fine, whatever that means for you. But that wasn't so much like the thing for me. It was more so, who do I want to be? How do I want to impact the world? And I'm trying to remember if it was like maybe around 35, I start to feel stuck. I was like, okay, I have a job, I'm doing my thing, but I just was like, I felt like I was just spinning. And I'm not sure if any of you have ever felt like that or if you are feeling like that now. But I, went to work and did my whole thing and did the spiel and all that. I remember specifically at the job that I was working around the time that I was 35, 36, 37-ish. And I felt like I was a robot, to be honest with you, because I was doing like the same thing every day and like saying the same spiel to, people every day. And I was actually doing a lot of webinars and workshops. And I could have done them like without even thinking, because it was like going on autopilot. And I said to myself, my gosh, like, is this it? Like, is this it? Now, it's not bad to have a job, and a lot of people want jobs where they can do autopilot, and I think that that's entirely fine. For me, I remember that because for me, that was all I really had going on. I didn't have children. I wasn't in a relationship. And so I was just like, kind of like, okay, this is like the thing for me that is, propelling me. It's the thing that's filling my cup. You probably hear a lot of people say, do things that fill your cup. And that was what was filling my cup. And my cup had cracks in it. I mean, my cup was a little shaky at that point, because I was like, okay, that this is all that I'm gonna do. And again, for some people, that would be, I have other things that I'm doing. I'm a parent, I'm doing, so I was like, okay, Stacey, like, what is it that you want to do? And I remember speaking to like the director at the time, and I said, I feel like I could do more. I got like a little couple of things that I could do, and I started training people in the state, and that was great. And it started to make me feel a little bit, good, because I'm able to help other people, and that actually is a real big deal for me. But again, I started to be the same thing again, like shortly after. It was like that, and then blah, like we're done again. I said, okay, like what's going on? I had to figure out something. So Then what happened was I went and spoke to the director again, and I said, I feel like at this point I'm ready to move up, and what is it that you could see me doing here? And my director literally said to me, nothing. I don't think there's anywhere for you to grow because I'm not leaving, and I don't know where else you could fit. And so I was like, oh, that's not what I expected to hear. I didn't expect them to be like, there's nothing else we can do for you here. And so at that point, I had to start thinking, where else can my, experience be used? What else can I be doing with my background and my skills and whatnot? But I will tell you honestly, I had a lot of self-doubt, because when you've been doing something for so long and you don't have to think about it, and now you're like, I have to think about an entirely new plan. I am definitely a creature of habit. I've learned that about myself. I thought I wasn't that person, but I am in so many ways. There are lots of ways that I can mix it up, but for especially employment, I like being a creature of habit. I found that, and that probably sounds weird because I told you I felt stuck. I felt stuck because I knew there was something more that I was supposed to be doing. But I don't like job searching. I'm gonna tell you right now, if you're in the job search like I am, it stinks. Like, there's nothing that I'm going to tell you, and I'm a certified resume writer, so I know how to write a resume, I know how to write a cover letter, I taught job search, I know how to do all that. It still stinks. I still don't enjoy it, it's not fun. But what I will tell you is it does force you to look at yourself, and it forces you to look at the ways that you present. So what is your brand? That if people look at your resume and they see all the things you've done, that's what they would consider your brand. If they look on your LinkedIn account, that would be what they consider your brand. What is your reality? Because your brand, what's on this piece of paper, may have been what you were, and now you may want to be doing something entirely different. So your reality, the things in your life, may have changed. One thing that I had been doing for forever, in my church, I had been doing plays. I had done it for 20 years and loved to do plays. Like, it's definitely something that I feel very blessed that God gave me the ability to write and to write plays, because plays are a little bit different than if you've written a book or, that type of thing. So it's really different in that you are walking through a variety of characters, and it's similar in the book, in books, but you're not necessarily trying to do it in the same way, because I feel like in books you want there to be more ambiguity. You don't necessarily you want people to leave wanting maybe to read book 2 or book 3, and so a lot of my plays were one-offs. I wasn't trying to necessarily always connect a character, but what I will say is it was super enjoyable for me. But I also knew that my time in doing that and the way that I was doing it was coming to a close, and because so many people had an expectation of me, it took longer than it needed to. I actually did it for an additional year than I had already said that I was going to, because I feel like, that was the expectation. That was the expectation of me. And I honestly, because I'm a creature of habit, had a hard time letting go, even though God had already told me that I was done. So let it be very clear. I was already, God had already said, Stacey, you've done, and he didn't say it like this, right? But he had already said that my time doing it in the way that I was doing it was done. And so what I will say is, even sometimes when I know the reality of it, it is sometimes hard to let go of what your old box was. But do you want to stay in that box forever, or is your intention on moving forward? So how many of you, just curious, feel like the brand that you've always been, so the box that you're labeled as, is the same as your reality, the exact same? Because if it is, I want to figure out, I have some questions for you. If you feel like your box that people labeled and stamped, this is who Tiffany is, and she's the same exactly as this is who Kim is, and she's exactly the same with Al, and I'm like, who else is on here? And Cheryl. and Kathy, the same. I'm sorry if anybody else is in here. I haven't seen you come in, or you didn't say hello when you came in, so I'm not sure if you're here. But are you the same? No. The reality is you're not. Why is that? Why do you think that the brand that people, and even yourself, have allowed people to, put you in is different from your reality? It's, for me, really simple. There are a lot of people that you know that don't know you, right? You know of these people and they know of you, but they don't know who you are. They don't know the reasons why you might cry at night. They control. Absolutely. That is a big reason. People do love to control the narrative and how people come out and be able to say, look what I did for so-and-so, right? People love a lot of that too. But what I will say is, the person that you are is held secret to very few, and maybe not even anybody but you. And I will also even go further to say this. Sometimes we lie to ourselves, right? We're like, well, you know what? I can't do this. You're right. I'm just going to do what so-and-so told me that I can do, or who I can be, because, you know what? I didn't go to school, so I don't have that education, so I'm not going to be able to apply for this job. Or, I have such and such going on, so, nobody's going to want to be in a relationship with me. Or, whatever it is that we have even convinced ourselves that we are not worthy of just being ourselves. That in itself is its own reality, right? I will definitely say, for me, the biggest reason why the brand Stacey and the reality of Stacey are different is because there's very few people who know all the things that I want to do with my life. There are very few people that I let into the closest emotional space of what I have going on in my life, and that is intentional. Why is that intentional? Because not everybody who knows you actually is happy for you. Not everybody that knows you will actually pray for your progression. Not everybody that knows you actually wants to cheer you on. They may cheer you on. They might, that fake, God bless you, that. But they're not like, whoa, you can do it. They're not doing that. That's just the reality of it. And so I have learned as I've gotten older and been burned. I will say have been burned, because I have kind of been I would say I'm for many intents and purposes, I'm a fairly open person. I don't hold a lot to the vest as far as obviously things that are ultra private people don't know about, because it's not anybody's business, right? But for the most part, I'm like, it is what it is. If part of me sharing something about myself can bless somebody else, can help somebody to work through something, can make them feel not alone in their situation, I don't really care about holding that stuff tight. That's not me. That's not who I am. However, I do know that, and I've seen it where, something positive happened in my life and nobody was there to support. Or something positive happened and people said, oh yeah, I was really excited for you. Perfect example. One of the things that was interesting and for me in my life was not something that I ever intended to do was run for office, and I've spoken about this before. When I was running, many people said that they were excited about me running. Very few people actually helped me in the process of running, right? So holding signs, door knocking, hosting events, going with me to community events, just calling me and saying, hey, do you need anything? Those types of things that were so essential. So I do have a couple people on here who did do those things for me, or pray for me. Those types of things that were so necessary during a time that was so nerve-wracking for me, totally out of the box of what my brand had been, right? This was literally a life pivot, if you will. But it was interesting that even when I did win, I lost my second race, but when I won my first race, people that I thought would be happy for me, people that I thought would cheer for me, didn't. Instead, people made it about them, about, you know, what they could get from me now that they felt like I was somebody, right? So it was really interesting to watch that and how much that has shaped how I see people. And I don't want you to think that I'm now, you know, skeptical of all people and all that. I've always been an observer. I always have my eye on people, right? That's just how I am. But I don't want you to think that I don't think that anybody can be genuine, because I've met people post that I know that are very genuine. I met people during that process that were so genuine. But it also shaped my life view, right? It shaped how I am able to see people. It shaped what I look for when I'm interacting with people. So that's when you look at how your brand and how your reality how your brand kind of morphs itself into something different. Because now the realities of life, you can look at it and say, okay, I see who this person really always was. And potentially I had blinders on. There's a scripture in the Bible that, you know, it says the scales need to fall off people's eyes, which means, you know, now be able to see. And for me, that experience was one of those scale removing experiences. And that's actually a good title. Don't steal it. I just, right? But, and that happens to me all the time. Sometimes I'll have like, ooh, I could write that, or I could, you know, that type of a thing. But that's a scale removal type of situation where you're now able to see the reality that's in front of you, as opposed to people being able to hide who they were, hide how they felt about you. Because when people don't show up, that is speaking. That is loud. When people don't call, that is loud. When people make everything about themselves, that is loud. And let me be clear. I understand people go through things. Life's for everyone. So I understand that, and I don't negate that. And I'm not making it all about me. It's not like they have to drop their life for me. But it's just the fact of the matter is, when you're looking at things, like I told you, life events affect how you see things. And the reality of who Stacey is 100% different than the brand. There are pieces of that you may know about me. Yes. Do I love the Lord? Absolutely. Yes. Am I my minister? 100%. Yes. Was I a former school committee member? Absolutely. So you're able to see things that are visible to anyone. But do you know what's in Stacey's heart? Maybe. There may be a few of you that do. Do you know what maybe makes Stacey emotional? Do you know what makes Stacey angry? Does Stacey get angry? Yes, she does. You know, the reality of those things you may not know. And even in me telling you those things, that might be shaping your view of how you see me. Maybe now in your mind, my brand has shifted. And remember at the beginning I said, you have to be okay with that? I'm more than okay with that. Tell it. Fake, just fake. You are not even lying. I found and that's been, for me, I think I always want to give people the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, when people, I think it was Maya Angelou who said it, and maybe Oprah who repeated it, but when people show you who they are, believe them. I was like, I think in my mind, and this is part of, I think, just being how I was raised, but like, try to see the best in people. And that's not a bad thing within itself, but that doesn't also mean you need to be blind, right? And so, and blindly trust people. That's not what that means. You need to walk into things with your eyes open. And one of the things that the Bible also says is to guard your heart. And I didn't do that. I led with my heart with things. And so when you get heartbroken and then you have to repair yourself, and now your brand is angry, because my brand went through an angry season, and it's because I didn't do that. Then when you make it, they take credit. Man, who are you telling? I knew, Stacey, I knew you were gonna make it. Did you? Is that why you didn't do anything? Thank you so much. Be blessed, right? So you have a lot of that. Yeah, there was absolutely people that did not help at all. And also, this is the thing, right? In certain circumstances, people don't realize that people can't keep their trap shut, right? And so stuff would come back to me about how people didn't think that I was going to be elected and this and that and other thing, and how I shouldn't be elected and I wasn't going to be a good representative. I didn't have kids. Why was I going to be on the school committee? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, just so much mess was coming back to me. And, you know, the reality is you just have to recognize that not everybody's going to be happy for you being happy. But also, are you happy for happiness? Do you know what happiness looks like? Are you so tied into your old brand, what your brand is, what people told you your box and your label was, that you can't even see? You're not even willing to shape your own reality. For me, that brand that other people gave you can feel so claustrophobic. It can feel so claustrophobic, because you're doing anything and everything for other people. And at one point, where do you exist? Let me read what this says. I'm thankful that you saw something in me while being in your plays. Now I'm expected to be in others, but not being myself, so I can bring the character out. So I'm changing my story in a different area. It makes entire sense. It makes entire sense. And look, I didn't have to see much in you. You are a natural actress, like, without a doubt. And again, the reality of it is, I'm not done writing, right? That season of how I'm showing my plays and my work has ended, but I haven't stopped writing. So don't be surprised if you hear from me again. Don't be surprised. You know, I'm in a season that takes what my brand was and says, I'm going to create it. Whatever my brand looks like is going to be the reality that I live in. So what the brand other people had for me, unfortunately, they're going to find that that's not who Stacey is, and I'm okay with that. And that doesn't mean Stacey's going to be nasty or a diva or this. That's not what that means. That means I'm no longer willing at my age, as people say, at my grown age, right? But I'm not willing to say that people can now tell me who I am, because I know who I am. And that person is still going to shift. That person is still going to grow. That person is still going to change, because that means I'm still alive, right? If you are alive and you are stayed in the same stagnant place for the entirety of your years, that's sad to me. Because that means you weren't willing to take a chance on yourself. That means you weren't willing to do something different. That means you weren't willing to look at yourself and find the areas where you needed to unlearn and then relearn behaviors. Because let's be honest, that's sometimes what it is as well. I'm not in a place that somebody that, you know, knew a portion of me is able to inject who I need to be at this stage of my life. Now, it's not to say that I still don't take advice, because I still do take advice. I still have to take advice sometimes. But it does not mean that I'm going to say, you, as a person that's not living in my body, can create my brand. That's not my reality. Kim, you're an excellent actor. I will pay for tickets to your show. That's right. She's amazing. She really is. If you've ever wanted to see a comedic actress, I mean, she even did a little skit the other day at church, and I was like, man, so good. Just so good. So the reality of it is, but again, you cannot let somebody determine your brand. You cannot let somebody determine your reality. Your brand, what again for me is packaged by lots of other external fingers. Your reality is shaped by you and God. God already knows what your reality is, right? But you working with Him to define where you need to go and how you need to be and the person that you need to be. That other tentacles can give you advice. They can share their thoughts. They can even share their stories. But at the end of the day, you have to take on ownership of that and say, okay, thank you so much. And you take the meat and spit the bones, right? And I know some of y'all probably like, I chew the bones too. Don't do that. But the reality of it is that's super important. Is you have to be able to look at what people are giving. And I want you to understand, not everybody does some of the things they do out of ill will. They're not necessarily trying to be, sometimes they just don't know any better. And there are people that feel they need to inject their opinion in everything. They have to tell you how, why, when, if it was me, well, it's not you. So thank you so much. Be blessed. Right? And that's it. Like, you know, it doesn't have to be a nasty situation. It doesn't have to be, you know, any of that. But I think that it's time that your happiness is in your hands. And I definitely recognize that I was trying to help make other people happy, and that's not possible. And quite frankly, that's too much work. That's too much of a heavy lift, because that involves a lot of other things that I, as a person not living in your body, can do, right? But you have to say, I want to be happy. I want to live the life that I feel God has intended for me. And in order to do that, sometimes you have to let go of some of the boxed labels that people put on you to say, this is your brand and this is who you have to be. No, you do not. Did God tell you that? If not, thank you so much. Right? So that's something that I want you to, hopefully you're all able to think about that and take that away from today's episode. Yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about, so I could probably talk on and on and on about, but I'm hoping that this was helpful. And just for me, a lot of this is wanting for you to have, you know, a provoked thought process and really look at who you are, where you're at, and discover, who am I? What is my reality? And thank you for the brand, because maybe the brand pushed you towards your reality, but you don't have to stay in any box that you yourself did not design. So with that, I just want to thank you for being on episode 14 of Sipping Tea with Stacey T. I will say next Saturday, and you might have already seen, I have the next 2 episodes already written out. So next Saturday is going to be with Dr. Christian Jackson, and that one is going to be about relationship versus ritual in the church. So Christianity has changed a lot over you know, the years that it's been in existence, but I would say, you know, a lot in the last 100 years. And I feel like, you know, this is a conversation that is well overdue. I feel like a lot of what people are doing is ritual, going to church because it's something that their family did, versus relationships. So we're going to talk about that. You can ask any questions. Please ask him lots and lots of questions. And then, oh, thank you, Al. I appreciate it. And then after that, we'll have another episode that has already been advertised as well. So check those out. As I say at the end of all of my episodes, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and please extend to yourself and to me a measure of grace. I will see you next Saturday at 1, Sipping Tea. Bye, everyone.